Well, welcome. Tonight, there may be a number of our 6 loyal viewers who are as confused as I am, because depending on where I tune my satellite radio, whether it's to Fox News or CNN, it seems like I get different versions of what I thought was only one Democratic National Convention. So we have somebody joining us tonight who actually was there. And then we have our stalwart people who've always put up with us to talk about the liberal side of the House. So why don't we start with introductions?
Okay. Well, my name is Rand Barthel. I live in Mendon. I'm a member of the Democratic Town Committee in Mendon. I'm also involved in the 350 Massachusetts climate change movement. Those are the main ways in which I am political these days.
I'm Carolyn Barthel. I also live in Mendon. I'm a coordinator of the Greater Franklin Node for 350 Massachusetts in Franklin. I'm a member of the Democratic Town Committee in Mendon. And we are a part of also Drinking Liberally.
And Lisa Mosinski from Douglas. I'm a member of the Democratic State Committee, and I was a Bernie Sanders delegate to the National Convention. Also want to have a big shout out to Drinking Liberally here in Milford at the Turtle Tavern every other Wednesday night. Awesome place to hang out and talk about liberal politics.
I went there last Wednesday.
Did you really?
Or the last meeting on Wednesday.
Great.
I actually had a whole night off and I went down there.
Great.
And I'm happy to say I wasn't thrown out. I mean, I always joke because I'm too physically conservative to be a blue person. I'm too socially aware, I'm told, to be a red person. So I've declared purple. I am in the middle purple.
Maybe you should get yourself a purple suit.
I would get yelled at because that's Holy Cross colors, and my darling bride already tells me I have too much purple. So ulterior motives would be. Lisa, give us a feeling. I mean, again, I hate to make light of it, but depending who I listen to, it seemed like the greatest thing in the world or the biggest disaster in the world. And I got to believe somewhere in between is reality.
Oh, I think, of course, that's the way, depending on what media outlet you're listening to, what they want to spin it. But it was a very well scripted and crafted and executed convention, considering it was 4 days of speakers of varying backgrounds and from across the country. It was incredibly coordinated, and it was enjoyable. I didn't watch any of it on television, but even sitting through it all, it was enjoyable. From my perspective, being a Bernie delegate, there was a give and take between our delegation and the folks who were supporting Hillary Clinton, and whether everybody, we knew Bernie didn't have the number of delegates to succeed in the nomination, but he had 1,900 folks in the arena who were voting for him, and was very gracious, I think, in moving to nominate Hillary by acclamation. And from the perspective of being there as a Bernie delegate, our major issues were just being given a little time to adjust so that we weren't pressured to suddenly hold up a Hillary Kane sign. But that we were given time, because the Bernie delegates and Senator Sanders himself worked up to the very last second on what's called the platform, which is what Democrats will move forward with on issues in the coming years. And we were successful in changing drastically the superdelegate configuration, so that it is no longer that huge number of superdelegates, and you cannot declare that your preference now until a certain amount of time that's much closer to the election. So, especially modeled on a state rep in Maine who initiated that situation, it's now part of the national platform. And also we all pushed to have free tuition at public schools, and now you hear that the nominee is also pushing for that. So we made enormous strides in the platform, but the point I was trying to make was that we worked up to the very last minute, rules, platform, credentials, and we didn't have much time to think about who we were going to support afterwards, things like that. So,
But realistically, and I may be naive, but I had the good Dr. Rand here going Bernie, Bernie, Bernie. Was there ever a doubt that Rand would go not Donald Trump?
Well, there was no doubt in the good Dr. Rand's case, certainly.
But realistically, when they say, will the Bernie supporters eventually support Hillary? If your option is Donald Trump and Hillary, why do I believe that's a rhetorical question?
Well, it seems that about 90% of them are now supporting Hillary, if you can believe the latest polling.
That low?
And it actually surprises me that it's that low, but there are a few people who really are, more intense about it.
But what are their options?
Well, I have Facebook conversations with them all the time, and I ask them that, and I have yet to get a very satisfactory answer, frankly.
Realistically, from a practical point of view, if I say I'm not going to vote for Hillary because I don't trust her, because, so I'm going to vote for Trump. No, I'm not going to vote for him. But if you stay home, you're voting for Trump.
and that's the bigger problem.
That is the problem.
And that's why the Clinton campaign needs Bernie supporters to be critical to this moving to November, because we brought the energy and the passion to the campaign, and the young people. 80% of the young voters supported Bernie Sanders. So we need to make sure that every person who can vote and who's identified as a person who would vote for Hillary or for Bernie gets to the polls and votes for Hillary. If they stay home, to your point, it's a vote for Trump. And that's just
Well, I remember
not a vote
back
for America.
when, and candidly, blue or red, I have a hard time with both national committees, because when you looked at Ron Paul running, all of a sudden they turned around and said, hey, who let him in the building?
Right.
How many states did he win? 8. Okay, let's change the rules.
Let's fix that.
You gotta hit 10, or we're not letting you at the big boy table, the big kid table,
Yeah.
okay? Only boys and girls who are 10 or more can sit at this table. What a coincidence that he only hit 8.
Yeah.
And then I look at what was there before the Bernie movement.
Right.
That you're starting off, anybody who wants to try and unseat the coronation is starting at, 700 or whatever
600 or
number.
700 deficit, effectively.
Deficit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that's enough to scare most people.
Right.
And
But the other amazing thing that the Sanders campaign did was identify a way in this modern era of electronic money processing to be able to tap into millions of voters.
$10 donations?
$27.
$27.
And I went up. We went on
27.
we went on the Hillary website, and we found out that they have a button for $27.
$27.
Really?
They have made it.
Yeah.
They're really wanting to make this easy for the Bernie folks.
But that amount of the number of people who can tap in at that level, at those numbers, can actually make you competitive in a presidential national race, and that's amazing.
That's never been done before, ever.
Right.
Well,
And to
the
the
fact
Citizens
that the
United
word-
argument,
Well,
You
but
know?
the fact that the word socialist, when young Joe Kennedy came on the show, I said, Joe, you have to help me understand, because I'm hearing blah, 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 socialist, blah, blah, blah. My whole life, I've been watching capitalism against socialism, and we won. So now why would I want socialism to come into?
Because capitalism has run amok.
And
It's the excess that we've swung the pendulum this far, and now it needs to start to swing back, because Robert Reich has written a book, Saving Capitalism. Go ahead, Rand.
well, I was just going to say that another feature of this is that a very large slice of the electorate came to political consciousness after the Cold War ended. And so they don't have the same visceral
Stigma.
attitude, and you combine that with people who understand that what the Soviet Union represented was not anything like what we are talking about with socialism here. That
I think Carol hit it. It's not the word. And I've always said the far left scares me as much as the far right. When you swing the pendulum to either side, you know, when you look at the old Soviet Union, you can call it socialist, it was communism. It was taking
Right.
an ideal as far as it could go. You know, and
well, combined with a traditional Russian tendency towards despotic rule by whoever is in charge.
but even look at Maggie Thatcher, where she said socialism is wonderful till you run out of other people's money.
Right. But to that point, capitalism was never expected to be defined by the 1%.
Right.
Capitalism melded with democracy was supposed to be more opportunity for all. And suddenly, like 4 years ago with Mitt Romney and on with Occupy Wall Street, suddenly we have 1% of the population controlling just enormous wealth. And then we have the bottom that is just struggling on a day-to-day basis. And in abject poverty, poverty has actually increased over the last 50 years. And that's embarrassing to me as an American. It's increased. That's,
But again, it comes back to what Carol said. When you swing the pendulum,
yes.
either side, you got problems. You know, you swing it like the Soviet Union did, and you go bankrupt because you take all the incentive out of doing anything. You swing it too far to the right, and people are going to stand up.
Well, you create something that loses moral legitimacy in the eyes of most of the people who have to live under the system.
So we look at the convention,
Right.
and the first thing we hear is all the Bernie supporters were so surprised that the email scandal proved that the system was rigged against Bernie. Nobody's that naive, are they?
No.
I mean, when you start with superdelegates, aren't you already saying that the system's rigged against Bernie?
But you're certainly saying that the system has a preference, and the bar has been raised pretty high to.
Is that like saying Hiroshima was a minor inconvenience to the afternoon tea?
Well, it's kind of. I mean, and as you say, if that hadn't been there, it is possible that the outcome would have been different, because it's possible that more people would have looked harder at Sanders' candidacy earlier and seen something in it. There were other problems that Sanders faced that had nothing to do with the DNC.
But the Sanders movement, can you call it anything but a success?
No.
I think it succeeded tremendously.
Yeah,
It went
it's tremendous.
much farther than anybody thought it would.
I mean, if anybody ever looked at this little state, Vermont, having a senator who, maybe I'm the only one that, I really never heard of Bernie Sanders,
Oh,
you know, before this campaign. But I guess in Vermont you would have.
Well, if you
No.
if you went to Burlington, he was the mayor of Burlington for a long time, and
So all 15 people that live in Vermont
Yes.
knew him.
yeah.
But outside of
and the
Vermont.
25 cows.
And the I'm not saying that, I'll get in trouble if I make fun of the
And a lot of
bovines.
deer.
But I mean, realistically,
No, it was amazing.
it really was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you said something that I got to give both Bernie and Trump accolades for getting more people involved. The statistics are there. Somehow, good or bad emotion, you got a lot of young voters
Right.
involved supporting Bernie. And Trump got a lot of young, new Republicans supporting him.
Are they all? I haven't seen the demographics.
Well, they keep saying that he got more votes on the Republican side than any other candidate. I'm not sure if that's spin.
That's
But-
been.
Well, also, I mean, that's different from saying that he brought a lot of
Yeah.
new voters into the Republican process.
He may have just activated dormant
Right.
Republican voters. Okay,
Right.
but one way or another, I'm happy to see new kids come in. I'm happy to see dormant voters activated. Because I think the most important thing is for people to get their voice heard.
Right, and I think it's important to make sure that every citizen decides to vote and have their voice heard versus being complacent and leaving it to leadership. because the leadership now in the GOP is having a very difficult time trying to decide whether they can stay with their candidate or not. And the recent
Quite a number of them aren't.
situation with his bashing of a Gold Star mother and just being super critical of a Muslim couple who was sharing their experience on the convention stage, it's just intolerable. And so is the GOP leadership in a bigger quandary than ever before with having to decide whether or not they can continue to support their candidate?
Isn't it amazing to me that no matter what scandal Hillary brings up, Trump turns out, I'll be more negative.
Yep.
You know, when you sit there and say, let's face it, the hacking of the DNC, to me, there's two separate issues. One is the fact that the Russians got involved in our politics. That, to me, I don't care if they hack the Republicans or Democrats.
No,
We unite
that's a national
red and
security
blue
issue.
and say, hey, wait a minute,
Yeah.
stay out of my home.
absolutely.
You know, I don't like it.
Well, then so there's Congressman Cicilline in Rhode Island has filed legislation in Congress to prevent the practice of giving presidential candidates national security reports, briefings before they're president. So should that be discontinued as a practice? Because
Yeah, but that's a hit on Clinton.
no, it's also we're giving candidate Trump those same
Right.
briefings. Should that be the case?
Well, but that's a fundamental question. If it wasn't for the email scandal, if it wasn't for the server, and you would ask somebody about this, I don't know that anybody would object to saying these two people could be our president.
I'm concerned about
Well, except-
Trump having national security clearance. This guy doesn't,
Why?
because there is no connection between his mouth and his brain.
Or actually, there's no filter that stops
There's no filter.
whatever is in his brain from just coming out of
But
his mouth.
again, go the other way.
There-
People are concerned that Hillary is going to use her own server again or something and compromise national security
I don't
that
think
way.
she's a smart cookie. She's not going to go down that again.
Yeah,
Not
that's
after
what
what
worries
she's
me
been
the
through
first
about it.
time.
Well, and
It's-
I'm actually going to, at this point, I'm actually going to, as a Sanders supporter who has made the migration to Hillary and done some background looking about this and considering all of the long history of scandals, quote unquote, that have turned out to have no substance in them, that have been aimed at Hillary, I now take the position that when I hear people accuse Hillary of being dishonest or of doing these things, I am now going to start making a practice of demanding evidence and fact-checking the evidence that's provided, because I think that there's a lot of just plain nonsense out there that has become just sort of in the air, where people just assume that it's true. And
See, Rand, I'm not there. What I'm dealing with is the head of the FBI saying she shouldn't have done this. She was wrong in this, wrong.
and
That's, to me, a question of her judgment. Now, with Trump, I have no problem, because I don't think he has any judgment.
Right.
He just says whatever will get him a soundbite.
That's
Right.
You know what I mean? And when
Right.
you sit
And
there,
that's why I am concerned about any security clearance for him.
Right, and how does that qualify you as for president? That's what perplexes me.
well, especially since
and
there
again, I
seems to
find
be
them
this-
both at fault. I really do.
And lots of people do.
And you sit there and say, okay, if you don't give either one security clearance,
Well, all right, so right now it's briefings,
well, that's,
okay? It's national
but
security
briefing needs
briefings.
clearance.
So,
You can't be briefed on high level
Right.
without a Q clearance or whatever you need.
yeah, I don't know how he qualifies for it, because, I mean, she used to be Secretary of State.
Right.
Clearly, she's had high-level
She was
security
vetted
clearance
a
before.
long time ago. Yeah.
Right.
But, when you have somebody who has the lack of judgment to actually ask Putin to, do dirty work for Hillary,
Like-
on Hillary Clinton.
Like, come hack us some more.
Just the lack of judgment there is just so dumbfounding.
Just when I think, that I can get upset more at him, then, I mean, wait a minute, what is this all about? If Hillary hadn't had the email scandal, he wouldn't have any grounds in his mind. He'd still make something up, but, I got a problem. I really do, because I'm struggling on both sides.
There are people who have, this is an opinion, but there are people who have said that the reason probably Hillary did not want to go through the she actually asked for to have the same amount of security as Obama, and the FBI refused her.
National Security Agency,
National,
actually.
okay,
The
whatever.
NSA refused
Yeah, the
her.
NSA
Right. Would not let her
refused-
have a secure
would not
BlackBerry.
allow her to have the same access to security
That Obama has.
varieties on her email that Obama has, and because they said it was going to be too much of a pain in the neck.
And the irony of it is,
But wait a minute, then
Yeah.
that would blame Obama. Because
No.
it's his,
Well, I mean,
it
it
would
would
report
be
to him.
That would be the NSA.
the NSA.
the NSA, and Obama didn't actually go and tell them to
Wait a
do
minute,
it.
If
No.
the CEO of your company comes down and says, do this,
Yeah, you would
Doesn't
normally
work
expect
that
them to
way
do
in
that.
government.
It doesn't.
NSA is basically a whole kingdom unto itself. That's how the government operates now, in that you can change the presidential level, you can change certain elected officials, but the bureaucracy, the level of bureaucracy that sustains us on a daily, hourly basis is almost autonomous to those changes.
Yeah, and see, that's where I'm struggling, because I don't like that Donald Trump challenged anybody to come in and mess with our system. I think it's wrong. On the other hand, I really don't like that the DNC behaved like the RNC and had a prejudice against a legitimate candidate. They're supposed to be neutral.
And they claimed to be neutral during
Yeah,
during
and
the
Debbie
campaign.
Wasserman Schultz
The word
lost her job.
Bolshoi comes up in my mind, and I'm not talking about the famous Russian ballet. Neither one of them has, in my mind, and just my opinion, I have no facts, but I don't believe either one was neutral. The Republican National
You can bet
Committee
they weren't.
wanted anybody
No.
but Trump, and it's pretty obvious that the DNC had decided the coronation was on.
Right.
And who is this senator from the bovine state messing us up?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, who had never been a Democrat, who was coming and wanting to run for president as a Democrat, having been an independent for decades. And,
Well,
But we
you know,
can't.
and that's
But there's no place in this system for do-overs, right? So
Right.
now we have to move ahead. It's 99 days until the election.
right.
And
Well, I think more importantly, you don't even do over, he's had an effect.
Oh, yeah, huge effect.
No.
Next presidential election, will the next Bernie Rev 2 start at a 30% deficit with superdelegates?
no.
No,
Well,
no.
no,
Wow.
because
And
superdelegates
it's
have been
completely
curtailed
restructured.
And why are they curtailed?
because of the Bernie campaign.
You
Right.
talk, 1,900 Bernieites
Yeah,
delegates,
Delegates.
but they were Bernies.
Right.
Right.
yeah.
I think there would have been a real problem if,
He built enough strength to demand that change and
Legitimately,
get it.
And
if
he-
at the convention, they got up and said, okay, Bernie and Bernie supporters, we don't care about you. Lisa, go away. There would have been a revolt.
Well, a revolt and yeah,
and-
and there's
and a
no
lo-
chance that our Democratic nominee would win.
Right.
Right.
So at that point, you
Then-
have to look and say, I'm not sure that this free tuition will ever make real sense to me, because I don't know how the federal government would.
Well, it's free tuition and only at public schools.
But again, and
But,
it's free
yes.
tuition at public schools for families making less than $125,000.
That's
Right.
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 But when you look at, okay, who sets the tuition? You look at states like
States
Idaho, and they're investing, $14,000. Massachusetts is whatever, 20 grand. Why do I not believe that Idaho, if the feds are paying for it, wouldn't jump to 20 grand in about 2 seconds flat?
I'm not sure the feds exactly are going to be paying for it. It's going to be a partly restructuring in the taxes so that people who can afford to pay more, then that money gets funded, channeled to tuition, so that there is a compensation being built up so that tuition can be covered. It's only tuition, not room and board and all the other incidentals, but so that that can be applied to people who qualify.
But let's look at Massachusetts. If you want to raise tuition at UMass, it takes legislative approval.
Action to do it.
Yeah,
Okay, so what happens is we raise the fees.
Right.
yes, that's right.
You know, I remember when my daughters got the note, congratulations, you scored within the top 25%, so the Abigail Adams, you get free tuition at any state school.
Yeah,
Well, that's $2,900 or whatever it was back then out of 18,000.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
oh, yeah, yeah,
It's not a perfect, yeah.
no,
I mean, and there are still things I'm sure to be worked out, but it helps a little bit so that a student starting out today who's talented and creative doesn't end up being burdened with $60, $80,
And listen, I don't know
$200,000.
how.
or doesn't
Today.
go to college.
Right, but I
That's
don't know
the-
how a college graduate today, I mean, when I graduated, I was amazed that my parents, mom was a drill press operator at Draper, my father was an assembly worker at General Motors, and they were able to scrounge together $6,200 a year to get me through Holy Cross. So I graduated tuition, room and board, debt-free. Okay, today, same school, Holy Cross, if your parents couldn't help you and you had to pay the full toll, you're talking $250,000.
Why?
Oh, yeah,
And I sit there and say, when I graduated, I'll ask you, but I had $32.80 in my pocket.
Yeah, I think I had about 57.
You know, so you sit there and say, okay, if I'm graduating with, let's say,
Yeah.
nobody really except people who can pay the full $64,000 a year. But even if I only paid half, I'm graduating with $120,000 worth of debt that I got to pay back in 10 years. How the heck does that kid buy a house, buy a car?
you can't.
You can't.
That
isn't
is
happening for
a
a lot of
drain.
cases.
That's a drain on our economy.
Yeah.
We are letting the college debt slow our economy because people can't do what they would expect to do because they can't. They're always going to be beholden to their
I'm amazed
student
when I
debt.
hear some of the kids that graduated with my daughters that are paying $900 a month in student loans. That was
Not in a down pay, or not in a mortgage.
right.
Yeah.
That was 4 times the size of my mortgage. How the heck do they have any money left?
They don't.
Now, from a self-centered point
They're
of view,
all staying at home.
but from a self-centered point
Move
of view,
back in with mom and
they
dad.
move back home. I'm in heaven. I got my girls home, right?
Yeah.
But that's not the right thing. It's
No.
great for me.
But it's not what we thought the plan was.
No.
Yeah, and it's not the healthiest plan for the economy, for the
Right.
kids.
No.
Again, that.
So something has to
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
I remember having a discussion with the president of Holy Cross. When Emily was there, I got this great letter. First 2 paragraphs were all the cost cutting, cost control, and then it hit. First of all, I told him, I mean, you ought not ever use the word only and 62,000 in the same sentence.
Oh,
I'm sorry, to most of us, 62,000 is
It's
not
big.
an only. And number 2, you made a big deal out of the fact that you're only raising what you're taking out of my pocket by 5%. By the way, that's 2.5 times inflation. Why should you be proud?
and it's 5% of quite a big number.
But I mean, the whole idea. You know, so something's going to happen. You know, we talked about the price of homes eventually would explode, and it did. The market just said no more.
The debt issue, student debt issue, is the next bubble to burst, and hopefully we'll be able to stave that off by making some, by getting Hillary in and having her actually make some structure it in a way that people can actually afford it. I mean, in Australia, students are only required to pay, I think, 10 years, or is it 20 years, and it has to be a percentage of their income, and you only pay that for a certain length of time, and after that, you're done.
See, when we look at Europe, you look at countries like Greece, Portugal, Ireland, I mean, the people who worked for us there, they never saved much money. But when it came down to college, kids got in if they qualified and basically paid nominal amounts. So you didn't have to.
Right.
When you retired, the government didn't pay you $15,000 a year or $17,000, because I don't know how anybody's going to live on that.
Right.
Okay? But now you worry because the countries are going bankrupt trying to do that.
Right.
Are we not in danger of following the same model?
But I think, again, it's that
That's
1%. You know, why should your daughters be burdened with all that debt when banks and lending institutions who were, to me, committing criminal activities, who has ever gone to jail for that huge bottoming out of the economy?
There I agree with you. I mean,
for
I got a
thousands of
problem
people losing
believing that the
their homes.
1% has enough money to take care of the 99%.
Yeah,
It's not just the
exactly.
money. It's what Bernie talked about that is really important to me. It's equity. It's leveling the playing field so that your daughters get the same access, the same ability to tap into the American dream as that Wall Street trader, as that Goldman Sachs financial advisor, as any of those folks. Because if we don't do that, that 1% keeps getting fatter and fatter, and the masses keep growing and getting more and more disgruntled.
Don't you think,
and
as
we're
Carol
setting
said,
ourselves up.
Okay, you swung the pendulum.
Yeah.
The mood of the country is, and
It's
I'll
swinging back.
disagree that it ought to swing all the way back.
I'm not
We
saying
don't
that
want
it
it to
should.
swing all the way
You know,
back.
because I used
I
to
mean,
go
where
to
all the way is as
Soviet
far,
Union
you know.
twice a month, and I saw what it was like to swing it as far right as it is to swing it far left. But there's got to be some tweaks.
Yep.
And when I listen to everything Hillary promises, or, I mean, this, I'll build a wall and Mexico will pay for it.
There's a laugh.
Right, that was Trump.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you know, both sides.
Right.
I'm not comfortable with either side. You know, when Trump said, I'm going to ban Muslims, oh my God. Don't we remember 60s?
Yep.
When they said you can't let a Catholic be president because the Pope will move into the White House?
Right.
I mean, come on.
So I haven't been keeping track, but will there be presidential debates?
September.
Will there be presidential
except
debates?
that-
it's
I'm
not
hearing.
yet.
Well, except there's some noise happening that
Trump
that-
is wiggling out of it.
Well, Trump is complaining about the schedule and blaming Hillary and the DNC for the schedule, which is nonsense because the schedule was set back in September by the Commission on Presidential Debates, which is a bipartisan commission, which all that got scheduled long before anybody knew who the nominees were going to be.
And when the
And
NFL games
so-
were going to be played.
So his
Oh,
complaint is,
God forbid I should let something as minor as the choice of president get in the way with a football game.
But
absolutely,
That's what this country has become.
That's
So-
a scary movie.
that is.
But you know, some of the things, when I listen to Trump, if he had gotten up and said, I'm not going to let anybody immigrate into this country that isn't vetted.
They're already that way. It
But-
takes 2 years to vet.
Yeah, but
Syrians.
some of the countries, Carol, let's be serious, you cannot vet people from parts of Syria. There's no records to vet. I would feel more comfortable, but painting an entire society just saying no Muslims reminds me of the
Right.
no Catholics that they
Yeah.
threw in
Right.
our face when Kennedy ran.
Or nobody from any country that has a terrorism problem, which could be interpreted to mean France, it could be
I was going
interpreted
to say,
to
wait a
mean
minute, that's
Germany.
Europe, that's,
Yeah.
I mean,
you know,
come
and
on.
again-
Argentina, everywhere.
but it wouldn't grab the headlines.
But so I guess if we see debates the way the Republican primary debates rolled out, I'm really concerned that will the debates actually allow the candidates to go into any depth or be able to clarify their plans or present their plans? Or is it
Lisa,
going to be
allow or
easy to
force?
just say, boom?
Allow or force? That would be my question, because
Yeah.
will they allow it? Of course. You have a debate, and you say, talk to me about national security, and both candidates will be able to get up. and talk. But Trump, to this day, I don't know what he stands for.
He doesn't. He
doesn't-
doesn't.
You know what I mean?
He doesn't.
He doesn't know
I will
anything
be
about
better.
that.
He doesn't know himself.
I will do it faster,
Yeah.
which means you
Now,
won't
I
negotiate
got to
with
tell
it.
you, I was very happy to see Michelle Obama get up, and it's just my personal feeling that she got up and talked that America is great. Boy, that made me feel good, because for the past 8 years, I felt like the Obamas have been apologizing for being Americans way too many times. I haven't seen them get up and say, this is the best country in the world. You're supposed to be my CEO. You better be my best cheerleader. That was the first time I really felt she's saying it. This is a good thing. You know, and now you can debate be better, greater again, or I don't care.
You know,
But come on. If you really believe that there's a country that's better for your family, last time I looked, there's no, I mean, when we were East Bloc, Soviet Union in the 80s, you couldn't leave.
Right.
I never saw any rules that said, if you don't believe America's great, Rand,
you can move somewhere else.
go somewhere else that's better. You know, we have the same argument here in Milford about how our physical management isn't perfect. Well, you're right. We'll pick a town around Milford that
has-
you'd rather go to.
Right.
I mean, 11 years of a surplus. We fund it, what we need. Do we fund everything we want? No.
No.
But I wouldn't trade Milford with 32 million tucked away and 11-year surplus with any town around us. You know, same thing with America. You know, I'm having a hard time. A year ago when you came on last October, I said, I have this nightmare that I'm going to have a choice between a bumbler and a liar to vote for. God, that nightmare seems awful real right now.
Only the bumbler hardly ever tells the truth about anything.
Yeah, and I can't trust the other one because I just don't feel that she's being straight with me. So,
You know, the fact that she has been, I love Bernie. He's a straight shooter to me. I love who he is. You know exactly where he stands on things. But I've begun to appreciate the fact just how successful the Republican bashing has been for 25 years, and how they just keep slapping stuff on her and hoping that something will stick. And over decades, it has accumulated to a point where it's really.
but you know, the one thing that Trump said that resonated with me, he says, Hillary's entire life has been defined as one scandal after another.
Well, that's
because the Republicans have been determined to do that.
Yeah,
and it's actually, if you actually look at the record of what she has done by way of public service as opposed to what people have accused her of. She started out having an internship after her first year in law school working for the Children's Defense Fund. She went door to door trying to find kids who were disabled who were not in school and documenting why. And that led to a law that requires schools to teach kids with disabilities. You know, when she was First Lady, she led an effort to try to bring universal health insurance to make sure that your ability to get health care is not determined by the size of your paycheck. That failed. She picked herself up off the mat and went back to work and got a plan that at least covers 8 million children.
But did it really fail, Rand? I mean, didn't she start what we have now?
She started the conversation.
She started the conversation, but what we have now is a plan that actually has its origins in the Heritage Foundation's counter plan. It's still not clear to me what the Hillary Care plan of the 1990s would actually have done or how it would have worked.
But you know, realistically, when people say we don't want universal health care, I laugh. Say, really? Some little kid, a little boy or a little girl, comes right here
In the hospital.
to the medical center I mean, the guy who runs it, Jeff Hopkins, has said, I have no clue. Once they make it through reception, I'm agnostic when it comes down to payment. Don't know, don't care.
Right.
We are never going to turn away a sick child, a
Right.
sick individual.
So then it becomes a question of how are we going to rationally apportion the resources to make it
How are we going to
work?
pay for it?
Right.
Do we want to make somebody wait until it's acute before we treat them, that they have pneumonia? Of
We
course
already
not.
do. But we already do. By people being convinced that they don't have access to health care. So we already do that.
But you know, it's the same thing when I hear, well, we got a lot of heat about the children that came from Texas, the border kids that we had to assimilate into Milford.
Right.
And I got accused of being from a set of parents that weren't married. Because,
Oh, really?
yes.
Somebody said that about
The
you.
B word that it was, because I got up and said, look, first of all, I know that Milford is the center of the universe. 28,000 of us know. 6 billion others need to be
Haven't found
educated.
out yet.
Right? But at the end of the day, Milford, we can't deport them to Burrillville, right? We don't control immigration policy.
Right.
So when the federal government put these kids in Milford, they became Milford kids. At that point, I'm sorry, I don't need anybody from Beacon Hill or Washington to tell me how to take care of Milford kids. They're now ours, we take care of them. End of story.
Right.
So I laugh because I sit there and say, I'd like to see the Milfordian go down to the Texas border and have some little kid, boy or girl, come to them and say, Mister, please help me. I'm sick, I'm scared. And do I believe anybody here would kick them and turn their back? No. It's so easy on paper.
Yep.
You know, it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
statistic. Look at the kids. And now
Right.
they're here in Milford, and guess what? They're acclimating, they're Milford kids. So it's the same thing with the
I think
health
that-
care. You know, making this statement that we're going to deny people health care, that's a joke. We're not going to. It's how do we implement it?
And how do we make sure that healthcare is efficient, which means that it's delivered in a timely way so that you deal with
Well,
problems
but see,
before they
there's the
become
problem. How do you
expensive?
pay for it?
And how do you?
You can't let it, you know, this fallacy, medical inflation. It's like, I'm sorry, wrong answer. We are going to have limited resources, and how do you best deal with them?
Well, there won't be all those policy payments, you know, your insurance policy, you won't be paying those. That's part of it.
No, just be
That's
paying
not
it
an
through your
that's
taxes.
it's a huge industry. And that just, all that money does not actually go directly to care. It goes to the bureaucracy, to the health insurance companies that pay, that are the bean counters that deal with this.
And that's the part, in my mind, that has to be trimmed.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
then we
That
have
would
no
do it.
resources to do the medical care.
Which is the whole point of the exercise in the first place.
Question, you held up a sign. It has 2 names on it.
Right. That's fine.
And it says Kane.
Yes.
As a Bernieite, how do you feel about Clinton Kane?
I personally, as a Bernieite, would have liked to have seen a different choice because I think that was a very safe choice for her. And I am thinking about 4 years down the road, 8 years down the road. Is this a potential president for us? Or would the Secretary of Labor have been a better choice? Would one of the Castro brothers have been a better choice? Would Cory Booker have been
Sherrod
Better
Brown.
Sherrod Brown? There were lots of other
I'm
choices.
glad you didn't bring up the name Elizabeth Warren.
I'm very,
No.
very
Protective.
selfish
Yes,
about that.
me too.
Because I wouldn't understand how somebody, I mean, if I was sitting in her position and said, the influence I can have in the Senate
Right.
Versus,
versus,
Huge.
okay, just sit back there and don't cause a lot of problems as vice president.
No.
I can't imagine why she'd give that up.
No,
You know, and it's
and
very
I think the
clear-
same is for Bernie. Some folks were saying, oh, well, Bernie can be vice president. I'm like, no.
Why? He's got a chance. He has fundamentally shifted. the
Exactly.
whether you say it's for good or for bad is a personal choice.
Yep.
and he's now a power in the Democratic caucus and
Bingo.
Senate.
Right.
And he has influence he could never have dreamed of having.
Plus, I can't understand how somebody like Elizabeth Warren, who has made, let's face it, her name is reforming Wall Street and all. Well, wait a minute. Wall Street has backed Hillary pretty heavy.
Right.
So, how do you join it and go, because I still have a hard time believing that Hillary can reform Wall Street when she's getting all that money from Wall Street.
I get it, I understand it, but once she's in, then it's our job to push her in the right direction and to push her to be in agreement with the platform.
See, now that, I mean, I joked when your counterparts, Ed Bertorelli and the less than liberals came on, where I said Hillary, Milhouse, Clinton. Because in my mind, just like Richard Milhouse himself, she seems to believe she's above the law that applies to the rest of us. And when you say once she gets in, we'll change her, I don't think you change. Leopards don't wear stripes.
Well, look what she changed during the course of Bernie's candidacy. She just kept pushing farther and farther and farther to the left. We aren't done yet.
And there I believe it, Carol. I mean, Bernie, if Bernie hadn't run, and again, just my opinion, the fundamental shift would have never happened.
I agree.
You know, the superdelegates would have gone from 700 to 900.
Right.
Right.
It would have just become more and more entrenched.
Well, and Hillary's platform would have been an amorphous pile of pablum, and she
It's
wouldn't have
Obama
had to, she wouldn't have
part
had to
two.
stand for anything.
No, but it would have been Obama part 2. I like what's going on. We'll stay there.
Right.
But if she if she wants to get reelected in 4 years, she's going to have to. We're going to have to push her, and she's going to have to stick to it. Otherwise, she won't. She'll only last 4 years. We'll find somebody else.
Because she's got to actually accomplish some of this stuff.
But the other thing is that there's two words that people often leave out of these discussions. And when you're having this agonizing, who am I going to vote for? There are two words, and that's Supreme Court. Because of the situation we're in today, that we cannot get a nominee moved forward even to a hearing, and the age of the justices that are on the court today.
But take
If
short
you-
term. How
but
do you
November-
feel about that? That
November to January.
We're not plugging in a Supreme Court justice. We're leaving it 4v4.
Oh, it's unconstitutional to me.
But then the dang Republicans are no better than the dang Democrats.
Exactly.
Because the Democrats did the same thing when they had control.
They never did
Not
see
not
that.
nearly
No,
to
they never
this
didn't
extent.
let a
No.
hearing go forward.
No, it took a little
bit
we'll
longer.
do a fact check, because just like when you said Obama hasn't used that
Yep.
many more executive orders,
Right.
I went back and checked, but if I remember,
Who do you think it?
Obama was part of the filibuster, and Biden, I mean, the thing that they threw up was the Biden law, that they didn't want the last X months to allow, well, they had hearings, but they wouldn't approve anybody.
Okay, but there was a hearing at least.
They had a
You know,
hearing.
candidly, tomato, tomato, if you say, I'm gonna talk to you, but I won't approve you, it still leaves
Well,
an opening.
But, all right, so you're right. So
And
to
then there's
me,
the
whether
question
it's
of how much
Democrat or
time there was.
Republican, it is
They feel the
unconstitutional.
same to me.
But it's unconstitutional to
Yes.
me.
Yes.
Right?
I think it's unconscionable.
Right.
Whether it's legal or not, I have no doubt that the Republicans, like the Democrats before them, are staying within the law. What bothers me is, you shouldn't want this.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And-
So,
Right.
but project forward over the next 4 years, who do you
Well,
want
see, there's the part that I
nominating
think people don't look at.
the justices?
Is Hillary at most can either lead or destroy for 8 years. Argue either way, but it's an 8-year. The Supreme Court selections can last for
huge.
decades.
Decades.
Absolutely.
So, you
Your
know, again, whether you
grandchildren.
think Trump is great or terrible, the most he can influence really is 8 years. The most Hillary can influence is 8 direct years. But long-term,
But
by
court
putting in
appointments,
2 or 3 Supreme Court justices,
Decades.
decades.
your grandchildren, their children
Yes.
will be affected by those choices. And so I think this is a
And you know, this is the part I don't understand. To me, it's a crapshoot, because I really believe Obama went more centralist on his nomination to hopefully get it through. If he had picked a wild lefty,
Oh, yeah.
then the country would have said, "Oh, come on."
Right. No, this was, he deliberately went reasonable and
He
centrist.
went
Very
as
reasonable.
reasonable as you're going to get, and I sit there and say, okay, if Hillary wins, she may go a lot further to the left.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The
There's
Republicans are playing a very dangerous game here, because right now most of the models show Hillary winning. And if, what you'd have to assume, from their point of view, what they're doing now effectively is assuming that they think they can do better than this Merrick Garland.
But come December, the Garland issue could go away. Because if Trump wins, he's not going to
Right.
put Garland up.
Right.
No.
I mean, gut feel, without any data, there'll be somebody more to the right. And if Hillary wins, okay, so why would she put Garland up? She'll go somebody more to the left.
Well,
So would they
she has
scramble
lots of
to
other
get him
posi-
nominated then, to
Oh.
push him forward.
And that's why I
So-
think it's unconscionable that they're not debating him. But
Absolutely. No
I'm
argument
just
here.
as upset that years ago the Democrats did it. I mean, it's really,
But this is long, long past any precedent before, since this is setting new delay
we're
limits.
debating whether it hurts more to have a 1 megaton nuclear weapon on my foot or a 5. At the end of the day,
Your foot's gone. You're gone.
it doesn't make me feel better. You know, it just,
Yeah.
So I want you to go back and fact check, since I'm ordering up fact checks here. I want you to go back and fact check exactly what the circumstances were
with the Biden,
with the
you know,
other
when you
one.
hear them yelling bork,
how,
bork.
how much time were they proposing to
that's-
delay?
And that's what I want to
And-
find out.
And what actually happened? Did they hold hearings and then what
And
happened?
if I remember right, it was a shorter time and they held hearings, but under no way did anybody believe the hearings would move forward till after the election, which to me almost feels as bad. This feels a little worse, but like you just said it, either way, you drop it on my foot, I'm gone.
Well, you also combine this with the fact that the Republicans have just plain blanket held up hundreds of nominations to
At the
lower courts.
lower court
which are
level.
now, the lower courts are now unstaffed.
And that's going to be interesting because if a Hillary wins,
Yeah,
But
she might
now-
staff the whole thing.
well, she's going
however-
to certainly not nominate
Well, if we
the same people.
if we take the Senate, they'll staff it right on up.
But you know, again, I don't have any data, but I don't believe Hillary will nominate the same medium and lower level court
We'll
nominees.
see. I mean, Bernie gave Hillary permission to talk about things that she was not touching with a 10-foot pole.
Sure.
And so we'll see exactly whether she continues in the vein of pushing the envelope. And
And what I truly believe
Yeah.
is that what makes our government so strong is we're a super tanker. Whether Hillary comes in or Donald comes in, you're not. When I was in France in 1980 and the socialists beat the conservatives, oh my God, the pendulum swung so far so quickly.
Because under their system, you get to implement your program if you win
Immediately.
the election.
I
But here
don't
it
believe
doesn't-
that either Hillary or Donald Trump could make those kind of fundamental changes. Thank God. We'll see when you come back in
Yeah.
3 months. But before we end, pipeline is dead, right? We read in the paper that no more problems with pipelines.
no, that's not true. No, the Kinder Morgan Northeast Direct pipeline did get withdrawn. And we'll see whether it comes back in some sort of zombie shape.
Well, Carol, let's face it, the market killed the pipeline, that pipeline, because the economics.
They didn't have the money. They worked really hard. They didn't have the business.
Right.
And that is the premise
that's the
that
market.
that the
That's the
Federal Energy
market.
Regulatory Commission.
You know, you
That's-
came on and you said you did not believe their data that said there was an incredible demand, that pipeline is needed to meet the demand. And guess what? The market validated what you said. So that went away. But too many people believe the whole pipeline question now is gone.
No. There's Spectra Access Northeast is still alive and going through the process of the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And it's in pre-filing right now. They will file formally in the fall. I don't know the exact month, but they will be filing. And Milford is one of the towns that would be on
And
it.
don't they still want me to pay for that pipeline?
Yes, they do.
And how would they get me to pay for it?
The Department of Public Utilities wants you to pay for this pipeline on your utility bill, a surcharge for 20 years.
So if you're an electricity user, you would pay for it even if you're not a gas user.
Right. And that annoys me because I want natural gas. I don't have it in my house. But, it's like in Milford, we have sewer for certain parts of the town. The cost is borne by the users that
Have it.
have it. I don't pay sewer
Right.
rates. I'd like to.
Because
Same thing with the gas. Run gas pipeline to me. I would like it, but I don't. But yet, my understanding is that I'm going to pay for it anyway.
That's right,
That's right.
everybody.
I don't think I like paying for things I don't.
No, that's
Lots
why
of
we're
people
calling
don't
it.
like that.
That's why we're calling it a pipeline tax, because it's still money out of your pocket. I mean, Mitt Romney, said he wasn't going to pass any taxes, and he didn't. He just charged everybody fees.
Yeah, but the minute you start with that fee game, one way or another, I feel somebody's hand going in my pocket.
And you should
That's
feel
right.
that.
And if they're
that's
taking
exactly
money out of
what
my
it is.
pocket, tomato.
Right.
Whether you call it a tax or a fee, I'm still, we used to play the game of the tax rate in Milford didn't go up. And when I got on the finance committee, I finally said, wait a minute, that's insulting my intelligence. I don't want to hear about tax rates, but my house went higher, but you're more wealthy because your house is worth more. I said, so when I go to Shaw's and say, I don't have any money, but my house is worth more, can I have some free bread and milk?
Well, if my house becomes more valuable, I should be able to go to my employer and ask them to pay me more.
Well, here we go. So, to me, this whole thing, the pipeline issue is still there. But if it was the users paying for it, that the market said we really need it and we're willing to pay for it, I might feel different.
Now, the thing about this is that this whole issue of the pipeline tax has, there's a lawsuit that will be decided by the Supreme Judicial Court in August or September. It's coming up, whether it's actually legal or not. And we'll see what they decide.
Well, thank you for coming on. I know we spent a lot more time than we probably should have. But as I say, depending on what mood I'm in, CNN tells me the Republican committee was a disaster. Fox says it was great, and vice versa on the Democratic. And unfortunately, I'm sort of in the purple area in the middle saying neither one of them's perfect. And somehow I'm going to have to hold my nose and
You are.
make a decision pretty soon. But hopefully we'll have you all on before then. So thank you for your insight. As always, what you heard tonight is what I've always said for the past few years. We won't ask you to vote for either blue or red, not our position here. Inappropriate for me to ask you to vote for a candidate. But I think it's very appropriate for me to beg you, get out and vote. Let people hear your voice, because that to me is the most important thing. We've seen some amazing changes in the election process this year, both on the Bernie side, getting so many young people involved, on the Trump side, getting all the publicity he did with virtually no money spent out of his pocket. Both of them amaze me.
Right.
But as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, may God bless, and may tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Thank you.
Not too long since I've been home.